It's another episode of The Next Fix, a show where we like to have conversations about being a reformed scumbag. Now, this gentleman here, Steve, he's saying he doesn't quite know whether or not he got the scumbag status, but we're going to be the judge of that, right? I feel I can hear a bit of a scumbag there. And if anything else, we're gonna cherish a bunch of laughs. This man is now, or maybe has been, stand-up comedian, but he's also had the train come off the tracks too. He's one of us. He gets it. And so, Steve, welcome to the show, brother. How you living?
Doing good. Thank you, Ryan. Happy to be here and definitely looking forward to our conversation to at least evaluate if I've ever been a scumbag or not. So we'll see where the meter takes us on this one.
Sure. Yeah. That's a pretty good idea. I'm thinking maybe I could develop like a scumbag meter, but if it's in the same room with me, it might break. So we're going to see. We'll see how this goes, my brother. But, as the question I always enjoy asking, when exactly did this shit hit the fan, man? Okay, I know, as I always let everybody know, I don't know too much. So I'm coming in very delightfully ignorant, as I like to put it. But I want to know, man, what did it look like for you when you're looking in the mirror and wondering what the fuck?
It first hit the fan, actually, when I was about 17, 18 years old. I didn't drink up until I was 17. And my grandmother died, who I was very close to. And then about 3 weeks later, one of my best friend's brothers committed suicide. And all of a sudden, I'm just a double loss. And I started to hang out with this friend while him and his brothers were big partiers. So I went from not having any alcohol to pretty much chugging Seagram's 86 proof out of the bottle with them. So it was just put your foot on the gas and go and aim for the cliff. So pretty much every weekend for about 3-4 months, I'll just get loaded with them every weekend.
Now, did it start off like you tying one on to forget the loss that you had? You feel like you were that developed at that age to be like, oh, I'm coping? Or, how did it look for you?
Yeah, just not to feel. It was, hey, they were having fun drinking, so why don't I? And of course, I was such a lightweight. It didn't take much, but I got pretty wrecked on a consistent basis. And then a couple of friends in high school all of a sudden started to distance themselves from me because they were hearing rumblings that I was crossing over to the dark side. Because I always hung with a very smart, group of kids who weren't ever in trouble. And I never got in trouble, thank God. I mean, I'm sure I drove a couple of times when I should not have been driving.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure I did. But and that hit bottom for a while, and I stopped.
Okay.
And in my early 20s, I got into radio, and all of a sudden, hey, we got open bar. We're at events, listener, locally famous anyway. Listeners coming up, hey, you're Steve from the morning show. Hey, let me buy you a drink. Well, my record one night was 9 rum and cokes. Thank God it was a big event. It was at a hotel, and I had a room because I could hardly walk by the time I was done. And I woke up the next morning, and on only a couple of hours sleep, I had to have still been well above and did not make some good decisions. But knock on wood, never got in trouble. My guardian angels have more lives than a cat. I'm pretty convinced, because it hadn't killed me.
I mean, forgive me for being, maybe ignorant, but I have a perception of like stand-up comedy. I imagine, or at least what I imagine and I hear, that it's like backstage at a comedy club, man, there's like a lot of people, doing a lot of things to be as funny as they want to be, or as funny as they think they are, right? Like, is there still like, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol going on when it comes to comedy and that kind of a thing?
And mix in mental illness. Yeah, there's a lot of mental illness, a lot of broken, very damaged people in comedy, which is part of why I get away from it. A lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, but I learned early on that I was never drunk when I was on stage doing comedy, because then I couldn't remember my routines and I couldn't get the timing down. I was down in Boston one night on stage at this club I'd never played before. And I wasn't sure where I was in the lineup, so I had a nice tall rum and coke. And then somebody goes, oh, Steve, you're going up in a while. So I thought, well, I'm thirsty. So I had another one. And all I remember from that show is at one point going, anybody who's seen me before, how the hell does this bit end? Like, I couldn't remember the punchlines and they laughed. They thought it was part of the act. And I'm like, no, seriously, dude. Honestly, can't remember how this one ends. And I knew my stuff cold. I mean, I did stand up for 7 years. And I just learned that night, I will never be drunk on stage again.
You're not what we call a functional alcoholic, right? Like, because I could say, I got away with murder because I was able to count well when I was drunk. And so I found myself, even when I was bartending in Las Vegas, and I was, make no mistake about it, I was stealing. And so what we call the knuckle shuffle, it requires a lot of quick math and remembering how much you stole, because if you got too faded and you forgot, then you get caught, right? So I was exceptionally well at doing simple math quickly under pretty much any influence, or at least I thought I was. I mean, I could be fucking way off here.
Yeah. No, I was cheap, easy, funny as hell. I mean, I was just one of those fun drunks. I never got the whole attitude switch, the personality never changed. I got really funny, and then I got really tired.
Got it. That is not good for comedy. So a tired person is never good.
No, I mean, there were, a couple of nights I'd go up buzzed, and I would just say to myself, I'd have these like really long dramatic pauses, and the audience thought it was just part of the routine. And I'm trying to remember, what the hell am I supposed to say next? So I learned fairly early on doing that.
Right.
Have a drink after the show. That's cool. But don't drink before going on stage, because you're insulting your craft, and it's not cool for the host of because I was mostly an open micer most of those years. I got on a couple of bigger shows, but I was never a headliner or anything like that. I wasn't that ambitious. I didn't want to live the comedy lifestyle. Like, I never wanted to be a road comic, because given my past history with depression, working for an hour and having 23 hours all by myself in a hotel room is not a good combination.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that. And that's a really good point, man. Shit. Yeah, it's 1 hour and you're on the road. So unless you're able to afford a posse or bring your family or whatever, it's you're at the freaking Holiday Inn sitting there. And anybody watching this show understands that too much idle time is a recipe for a freaking disaster. So 23 hours a day, you will find yourself in trouble, even if you're not a scumbag, right? So
oh, the dark clouds would follow me wherever I went, because I've been prone to depression my entire life. And it goes back to imposter syndrome and self-doubt, lack of confidence, and all that stuff that I've survived 57 years so far.
Yeah. So now I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
And I know, I read through your notes, and so there's some rock bottom moments, specifically Tina, right? Like, so there's some things going on there. And so, what else was really happening for you that really gave you a run for your money as far as like, challenges and things?
Definitely early 2000s, blowing up my radio career, a 10-year successful radio career. And one day I just decided that I was absolutely fried, because I was working 50, 60 hours a week at the radio station and getting loaded a couple of nights a week at station events. And on the weekends, I was DJing weddings, because radio doesn't pay crap. So I was working 6-7 days a week for most of those 10 years. And I was married at the time. I had a first marriage, and I was just fried. And I walked away from it all and blew it all up in a short window of time, and wound up crashing back at my dad's house in my early 30s, and didn't really drink at the time, because I didn't like to drink at home. I didn't want to drink in front of anybody. But then when I started doing stand-up around 2004, I'd go have a couple drinks. And a couple of years after that, I reconnected with the most amazing woman in the world, who I'd gone to high school with, had a crush on in high school, but never asked out. And during the early 2000s, I also became a speaker. I learned about visualization, manifestation, law of attraction, vision boards, and all that stuff, but in a very non-woo-woo way. My style is referred to as blue-collar woo. So Tina and I fell in love in 2007, and she was out of state. She was in Florida at the time. I was still here in New Hampshire. Her company moved her to Vermont to at least be closer. And then in 2012, they moved her back here to New Hampshire, so we got to live together ever since 2013. And at night, to relax, we'd have a drink. She would make me a nice tall rum and Coke. Sometimes I would run in and make a second one, because I chugged the first one and thought, that wasn't strong at all. So I'd instantly do another one. And that pattern kept going for quite a while, till about 4.5 years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror one day, in a short window of time, still drinking at night, still putting a buzz on every night to relax. In a span of about 4 years, I had 3 people very close to me die, including my dad and one of my business mentors and our little dog. And then I was inhaling toxic black mold from our attic through the vent in my office right above my desk for 2 years and didn't even know it. I just knew something was really wrong.
Right.
So I had all these things going on. And because of the pandemic, I wasn't working. So I was sitting at my desk a lot and I put on about 30 pounds. So here I am 4.5 years ago, going through a bottle of 94 proof rum a week, to the point where I thought it was funny as hell to take a Sharpie and write my name on it, because the Coke cans came personalized with the name. So I started writing Steve on all the rum bottles. Like, that's my rum. Don't touch it. And I just looked in the mirror one day. I know exactly the day, May 4th, 2021. And I just looked in the mirror and I said, you are a puffy faced, fat piece of shit. And I didn't like the way I looked, didn't like the way I felt, didn't like the way I felt about myself, didn't like how far I let myself slide. I hadn't put my business back together after the pandemic when it finally started to create potential again. I shut down the DJ business. So there went that 28.5 years of my life and my identity gone. And here I am just getting buzzed every night. And when Tina would travel for business is pretty much where I started hitting the rock bottom. I would miss her so much. I would make a tall drink, suck it right down. I mean, we're talking a tall Cumby cup. Suck it right down, make another one, suck it right down, and I'd make a third. And then all three would kick in. And then she would call to say goodnight. And I would have to struggle to not sound loaded.
Right.
And then stagger my way to bed. And then wake up the next morning, I'd be fine. That was the problem. Never, ever. I didn't binge. That for me was binging. Now it was, a lot of rum and a little brown food coloring of Coke.
Sure.
But that was my bottom. And I just woke up. May 4th, 2021, I spent $3,000 to join a really amazing mastermind of entrepreneurs called Apex. They're based out of the Dallas area. And I looked at the rum bottle that night and I said, I just dropped $3,000 that I couldn't even afford to spend. And I just stood there and gave the bottle the finger. And I said, up yours. You can't have me tonight.
You literally did that.
I literally did that because it was funny. I just looked at it and I'm like giving it the finger. And I just laughed and I go, nah, not today. And I haven't had a drop of alcohol since. So it wasn't an intervention. It wasn't AA or a detox or anything. And God love those things for being there for the people who need them. But for me, it was an insidiously bad habit.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes it could be perceived as instantaneous, but it's really just a hard decision. But it's been kind of, been packing on for as long as you've been kind of pissed off at yourself quietly, right? You're quietly pissed off every time you fell asleep, and you know that you're trying to not speak, to not be found, to not be known for this mental state that you're in, self-induced, by the way. So here you are, pissed off at yourself on a daily basis. And so then that builds up, and it manifests into an instantaneous situation where you're flipping off the freaking bottle and all of that. But yeah, man, it all packed it up for you. And then it happens in that moment. So then what happened after the decision? How did everything unfold after that?
Well, I realized I hadn't been inside of a gym in 3.5 years, even though I still paid the monthly fee. So, I hope they used my money wisely. And I said, I'm going to go for a walk because I just did not like the way I looked. My face was all puffy. I've got a side-by-side picture that I actually took here in the studio, the before and the after. And I look at it now, I'm like, holy crap, different person.
Right. Yeah.
So I started walking. And I did go back to the gym for a little bit, but we had moved almost half an hour away from the gym. So I just started picking up these little inexpensive pieces of equipment and started working out at home, and was actually disciplined for the first time in my entire life to do the workouts. I have done about 5 workouts a week minimum for 4.5 years. Within a couple of months, the 15 pounds of booze weight just came right off. I'm down about 35 pounds now, and I've maintained that. We picked up a Peloton cycle, and I've done at least 2,400 miles a year for the past 3.5 years. It's over 10,000 miles total in that time. And it's the consistency that I used to have a drink every night is now how consistently I work out.
Right.
And it just feels so good.
Right.
And that's been really consistent. And I love the feeling. I love the results.
What about your mental capacity? What about your clarity? I mean, because you're doing a lot of creative things. You have done a lot of creative things for your life, right? So, I mean, and I don't know if there's anything truly more creative or demanding of a person's intelligence than comedy. I think that, it takes a real sharp mind to be funny. It really does. And so after the booze, I mean, how did these, elements of your life, how did they change?
I write better sober.
Okay.
I really do. I mean, it's gift from God. And I heard Jeff Foxworthy, I heard in a recent podcast, and he was talking about this. He says, I don't know where it came from. It just came from God. He goes, but if you asked me to write 100 jokes about home security, I could do it. And I'm very blessed to have that same gift. So alcohol was actually clouding it and slowing it down, and like it was running in sludge.
Yeah.
So after I stopped drinking, my brain got better. My speaking stories, my stage presence, and everything just got better. My timing was better. Everything kind of came back. I mean, I would never have been on a motivational event having had a drop of alcohol ever. I would never have done that. But stand up, yeah, it's a bar.
Right. And I think that normalcy of substances in the comedy scene, if you think back to like some of the Jim Belushi in those days, and then like those magnificent people, but during those times, I feel like it was normalcy people are just doing massive amounts of cocaine to get that boost of courage to go out there, because it's not freaking easy, man. You couldn't get me to do it. Like, I swear to you, man, I am a little sissy when it comes to, it took me forever to even try to manage this, right? Like, I would record myself and I'd be, oh my gosh, I just felt like the icks, right? Like hearing my own voice, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, man, I could see why a person would want some type of artificial gumption, some kind of booster of courage. And so it makes sense to me why it is so many people's solution. But do you think that's changing a little bit, like recently? Do you think like maybe the perception has changed about like at least comedy and, specifically?
Well, I wouldn't even want to be in comedy now, because if you see anything on social media, you see how audiences are now. A bunch of arrogant, entitled, a lot of total a-holes who don't even allow the comedian to work their craft. They heckle or they interrupt or they start yelling stuff that's political or whatever. I wouldn't even want to be around that now. But I had pretty much, after 7 years, I pretty much had it by then. Anyway, Tina had moved back to New Hampshire, so we're actually living together. I loved her so much. I just didn't want to leave her and go drive an hour and a half to do 5 minutes of comedy for free and have to buy 2 drinks. Because, you had to contribute towards the bottom line of the show so they could pay the actual guy they were paying. So you had to buy food and buy a couple of drinks and all that. Oh, yeah. If you were just a lowly opener or an open micer, you had to help fund the show. Alcohol was a pretty fun way to do that. And if you drank early enough, you could still drive home without getting in trouble. So.
Wow. I did not know that.
Didn't like that lifestyle anymore. And I just didn't want to be away from Tina.
So, yeah. Well, tell me more about Tina.
Yeah, we got to be in love for 6,386 days, 17 and a half years together. Like I said, we went to high school together. 21 years later, I'm putting my life back together. She was, just a distant memory. And in early June of 2007, I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. I'd done enough work on myself to be a better version of myself, version I was a little more confident in. Confidence has never been my strong suit. And self-esteem and my self-talk used to be, put it this way, if I talked to you the way I used to talk to myself, you would punch me in the face right through this camera.
Right.
I was brutal, but I could get laughs doing it, so I never saw how bad it was. So I worked on that for a long time. And in early June of 2007, I wrote in my journal, I am ready to fall in love. And on June 16th of 2007, I got this email from someone named Tina that I thought was spam, and I almost deleted it. And the next day I opened it up. It was this girl I went to high school with. And she said, hey, I saw your name online. Oh my God. The kid who used to hide behind me in math class was on the radio as a speaker, to stand-up comedy. I had to see if it was really you. We should stay in touch. I live in Florida now. And I emailed back. She emailed back her number. A couple of days later, I call her up. First words out of her mouth that I hear in 21 years. It's about time you call. And I just started laughing. And she wouldn't send me a picture. And she had no social media footprint. So I couldn't even Google her. And a month later, I'm starting to remember I had a crush on her in high school. And we're texting and phone calls and emails. And on July 1st, she sent me a text. Hey, can I tell you something if you promise not to freak out? And I typed back, sure. Here's how I really felt about you in high school. Here's how I felt when I saw your name. When you answered my email, when I heard your voice, here's how I feel right now. And she texted 143, and I had to go look it up. It's text code for I love you.
You had to
Here
go.
she is telling me
Right.
she loves me. So I quick look it up, and I answered right back. I said, I love you too. Still wouldn't send me a picture. August 19th of that year, she was flying up to New Hampshire because her grandmother was having surgery. Now, we have already said, and we've said every single day since, that we love each other. And I got to see her that day, and oh my gosh, the most beautiful angel in the world. Stunningly, naturally beautiful, one of the most humble, kind, generous, loving, caring. I mean, we literally brought a fairy tale to life. Our relationship and our story got me invited to 4 call-in shows on Oprah's old XM satellite radio network shows. And we got to be in love for 6,386 days until December 9th of last year. We were traveling. We flew over to London to go see a concert. Her favorite singer of all time was George Michael, and there was a tribute to George Michael concert done by his old touring musicians and singers with the blessing of his estate. And Tina surprised me, and she said, I know what our next trip is going to be. We're going to London. And we flew there, and 24 hours after we arrived, she had a heart episode and she died. And I found her in the hotel room. We'd gone to breakfast. She wanted to do some work, had to jump onto the work platform with her laptop. So I got her laptop, and I went down to the gym, and I came back up, and she was collapsed on the couch. Still had a pulse. And myself and a hotel employee were trying to revive her, and her heart stopped literally in my hands. And we'd had 12 hours prior. She wanted to go downstairs to the bar and have a drink. And this one's ironic because we gave our drink over to the bartender, English, not his first language, and he misunderstood. And he slides the drinks across, and Tina goes, honey, I think there's vodka in your drink. Don't touch it. And then she asked him, is there vodka? And he said, well, yes, that's what you asked. She goes, no, I said a double for mine. And he went to reach for the glass, and Tina goes, hang on. And she grabs it with her fingers and slides it across. Whatever made me think to grab my phone, the last picture ever taken of Tina is her fingers on the glass. And I took that picture. And then 12 hours later, she was gone. But we had the most amazingly deep, loving, caring, authentic, vulnerable conversation ever.
Yeah.
Where we both were saying, feeling unworthy of all these great things that had happened in our lives. And we're both kind of dealing with that still. And that was the first time she'd really admitted that to me. And 12 hours later, she was gone.
So,
yeah. So she saved me from accidentally drinking.
Right. Were you, were you pissed off? You don't seem pissed off.
No,
but
I've never been mad at her or at God. I'm sad. But no, never been mad at anyone. She was we were only 56 at the time. We're born like 7 weeks apart. I was 7 weeks older than her. And menopause just destroyed her for 2 years. I mean, she just had the worst side effects from that. She hadn't slept a full night in a year and a half. And she was exhausted. Emotionally, it was affecting her. And she was just struggling to stay functioning. And
what?
It just got worse and worse. And she had ischemic heart disease. So, her arteries and everything kept closing and closing. And she would never say a word about how she was feeling. Looking back and having talked to her boss and a couple of her coworkers, because they went on a couple of business trips, a month or two before Tina passed. And they called me up and they said, Steve, I feel horrible. And I said, why? And they said, there were signs. Although Tina played it off like it was nothing, there were signs.
It's so hard. It's so hard, though, because looking back, it's like, that's an unfair, it's an unfair judgment to have on oneself, looking back and saying there were all the signs, because it's too much to ask of another person to interpret that kind of a thing accurately, right? What were they supposed to do? But that is one of the most tragic elements of that story, is like the timing. And that's why I asked if you were pissed off, because for a guy who had struggled with depression your whole life, and you get your act together, and you've been doing all of your own due diligence, doing everything appropriately and correctly, and then boom, it gets snatched from you. And I'm not trying to pour salt on the wound. I just
No,
want
not at all. I talk about it on stage. I've been on probably, gosh, I was on 2 grief podcasts just a week ago out of Australia. And so I've been sharing our stories to help. I mean, one of the first phone calls I made, I was shaking and just shattered because I was there alone, 3,000 miles from home. That was on a Monday morning. And on Thursday, I had already reached out to everybody I wanted to, and I was going to share it on social media. Not to say where I was, because our house was very unprotected, but I was going to say something on social media about it because so many people loved our story. And I called my speaker agent because I did not want her reading it on social media. And I said, look, first of all, she said, are you going to be okay? And I said, yeah, I'm going to be okay. And I said, but when I'm ready, just know I want to be speaking on stage at grief conferences, not just for a paycheck and certainly not for applause. But there's going to be people in the audience who are fresh in their grief where I am right now, meaning then. I said, who want to run out of there and either drugs, alcohol, or worse, make a decision that's going to damage or end their lives. And I've got to be so freaking amazing on that stage and so passionate and charismatic and caring and loving that they feel it and they don't dare leave the room until they get a shred of hope.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I was not going to have a drink to get through it. And somebody that I didn't really know well actually reached out to me in a DM on Facebook. He goes, man, I know we don't really know each other face to face. And he said, but are you concerned that you're going to have a drink? He'd been following my journey. I said, man, I can't believe you reached out and asked that. And I'm so appreciative.
Yeah.
I said, for you to reach out with that concern, brother, that means the world to me.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not going to. But I was blown away that somebody I hardly knew reached out and knew that was an important part of my journey.
It's wildly accurate, like what you said about the appreciation, because at times when I've had people ask for whatever reason, I haven't thought about it much, clearly, because I'm stumbling all over my words, but it's the truth. I have felt so much gratitude when somebody has just asked me flat out, that was tough. Do you think about alcohol? Do you think about drinking? Are you thinking and it takes a lot of courage for people to approach somebody. I'm not in the trenches now, but there's a lot of people that cared very much about my well-being that never had the courage to ask ever. And so when I do encounter somebody that has that inclination to ask and they do, I think to myself, man, that is not always easy. They don't have any idea how much appreciation there is on the other side of the table, right? But wow, that's so wild that you put it like that, because I feel the same way. So Steve, you are spreading positivity. You are force feeding hope down people's mouths, right? Like, as you mentioned, you're not going to give up. You have the tenacity to make sure that when you are present and you're on stage, you are ensuring that somebody who needs to hear it is going to walk away with that hope. And so would you call that your current craft? I mean, is that really what you're after?
Yeah, it's pretty much what I've been doing all along. I'm not one of those speakers that jumps up and down and yells stuff that rhymes and actually does the cramming. I tell people all the time, I said, look, I was born in 1968. I have got to be a recycled hippie. I've never touched a drug in my life, never smoked a joint, never done pills or coke or nothing. But I have got to be the direct descendant of some hippie who smoked his body weight in weed. Because I am so mellow and laid back more than ever since losing Tina. And I've always just been inspired by what I see around me and in lessons. More than ever, I am so in tune with the world around me. Just sharing what I see, and other people, what I'm starting to hear more than ever before, are people commenting, how did you know I needed that message today?
Interesting.
And the answer is always the same. Well, I woke up and I needed it. So I found it and I shared it. And the clarity that comes from that, now that the black mold has been exorcised out of my body, I did a 4-month cellular detox, morning and night with certain pills to detoxify. Because I was in a cloud and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with my brain.
Yeah.
And then we found black mold in the attic by accident. We found it, thank God.
Right.
But that, and no alcohol at the time anyway. I was freshly out of alcohol at the time. But then losing Tina, I'm looking for signs of her every day, and I find them.
Wow.
She has shown up in the
Yeah.
most amazing ways. I was camping with some friends a few weekends ago up in Vermont, and they lit a fire, and of course it was freshly lit, so it was not a wide fire, but it was burning tall. And I kept looking at it, and I go, there's something in those flames. And I took a bunch of pictures, and sure enough, it looked like there was an angel with wings standing at the top of the fire. And I said, that was Tina. Some family and I went out to dinner a couple of weeks ago, and it was a semi-private room with a round table for 8 chairs. And my aunt lied and said there was going to be 8 of us so we could get the room. There was only 7 of us. And so the seat directly to my right was open. And I was probably the only person really who wasn't having a glass of wine or just some alcohol. Everyone always asks, I'm like, do what you want. It doesn't bother me. Near the end of dinner, I had a Coke and an ice water, and I looked down, and there was a puddle. It was the shape of an upside down heart between my chair and the empty chair. And I just looked up and said, thank you, baby.
Right.
She's just been here. So everything that I experience now, I take pictures of and I share with everybody. And so many people, more than ever, the content is just falling out of me every day because my mind is so much clearer. And I'm always looking for signs that Tina is somewhere near me, and she does not disappoint.
Yeah.
She's
I love that you made a choice, and you also mentioned that you never got mad at God. That is something I share with you, that throughout my journey in homelessness and hospitals and in jail and all that, like I never really got angry with God. I always knew that at the end of the day, it was my own actions. And you said that actually before we hit record, you're talking about self-induced. Like it was, and I think that's super important for somebody who is in a recovery journey. It's very important that you don't shrug off the responsibility, because without taking that responsibility, your chances of recovery are pretty much zero. And so I never had that phase. I know it's a real thing, and some people do get angry with God and say, why did you do this to me? It's just not something that I never did myself. Now, in addition to that, I really love and appreciate how you made a choice not to be angry about it, meaning Tina's death, because we get to choose. We can choose to be pissed off all the time. We've got plenty of reasons. You find the reasons to not be pissed off. And even now you find the reasons to be grateful, whether it be in the condensation from your Coca-Cola or flames burning into the sky, whatever it is, you have become in tune with noticing and seeing it, because you have the clarity, right? And 2, you're choosing to search for it. Right. And so there's always that argument, we get what we look for. And I personally had a situation where my sister was abducted, and my sister was jogging. She was abducted, and the guy said he was going to rape and kill her. And he threw her in his car, and he's driving down the road with her. This is in Gainesville, Florida. And he knocked her glasses off, and she's in this speeding car, and she realizes, I have to do something. And she jumps out of the moving car, scarred up her body pretty bad. She had the courage to jump out of this car, this vehicle, and save her own life. The guy, long story longer, right? The guy ended up going to prison. They caught him. They pretty much turned him into a vegetable in prison. Because
good.
Right. There is a bit of a code of conduct. People have mothers and daughters and stuff in there, and they dealt with him in there. However, that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is when I was told about what had happened, everybody assumed I was going to be just filled with this rage and filled with this anger and filled with this, like, oh gosh, you're going to kill this guy. Oh, you're going to go kill him. And all that. People assumed that was what was going to come out of my mouth, and that's how I was going to behave. However, I chose to be grateful that she didn't die and then she jumped out of the car. Despite her scars on her body from jumping out of a moving car and being accosted in the night, I was still like, I could have lost her. And so it's important to me that I knew and I remember, like, that was a circumstance. I had every right to be pissed. Nobody would argue with me being angry. However, I chose to be grateful for the presence of my sister. And so it's a choice, man. And I recognize that in you telling us about Tina, I mean, it's a very cool thing, man. And not everybody really figures that out, right? How to tune in to what they really want. And that's to be grateful, right? And happy. So how is that these days, man? Like what ended up developing? And I guess, what do you got for us in the future? Like what's on the horizon? I mean, what's going on?
I've used the last 10 months since losing Tina. Unfortunately, we've got legal stuff going on in the background. We three-striked ourselves in a way, and thank God for a loophole in New Hampshire law, which we were not officially married. We never wrote our wills, and we never shared all our passwords with each other. So my full-time job for 3 months after Tina died was finding all of her accounts and looking for everything. So my business took a back seat big time. My business just stopped. Nothing coming in, nothing was happening. That was my full-time job to take care of that.
Right.
The state of New Hampshire has a common law exemption in the case of probate only. If you live together for at least 3 years, we were 10.77 right to the day. Present yourselves to the world as though you were married. Most people thought we were, and they were very confused by the obituary, which said, my beloved partner of 17 years, Tina. They said, I thought you were married. We've been wearing rings for 9 years too. So that covered. And both our names are on this house, which we had for almost 7 years when she passed. So it's been a long legal process, which is just now hopefully getting resolved this week.
Wow.
So what I've been doing behind the scenes is working with some very creative partners and very talented people who are building me a new website. I've got all new business headshots. I traveled almost 2,000 miles to work with my favorite photographer in the world, who happens to live right near where my sister lives. So at least I had a bed to crash in for a couple of nights. But all these little investments of time behind the scenes, the switch hasn't even been flipped yet. But all this stuff is ready to rock. So not only am I growing and now sharing this whole other platform of grief podcasts, and I'll be speaking at grief conferences, I would imagine by early next year, I'll be on stage speaking. And it all goes back to a promise I made to Tina in January of 2023, because she came up to me one day in our living room and she was exhausted. And she gave me a big, tight hug, and she had her head on my chest, and she looked up, and in her soft little voice and her beautiful blue eyes, she said, honey, can I ask you a favor? I said, sure, baby. What? Can this be the year that you get famous so I can find a less stressful job? And by famous, all she meant was get paid to speak again, because I was, and the pandemic wiped it out. And then 3 other deaths wiped out my momentum. But that was a promise I made to her. And I've thought about that so many times since she passed. And just the other day, I was talking with somebody and they said, Steve, this is your lane now, man. In addition to the other stuff, I talk visualization, vision board, straight up motivation, positivity, gratitude, kindness, all that stuff. But this person said, Steve, this is what Tina was talking about. She literally gave you this lane. You've already got people all around the world listening to you on podcasts. She says, Steve, you've got to get out there and help more people. Tina literally died to give you this way for you to fulfill your promise to her. And it's a weird irony in it all, but I'm not going to drop the opportunity. And just less than a year ago, I remember one day I was really down and hugged her in the living room. And I told her I had a conversation with God today. And she looked at me funny. I said, you can take anything you want from me. You can take the house, you can take my money, you can take my business, you can take my car, you can take anything, but please, you cannot take my Tina. Even having said that, I was not mad at God, but I did joke with him a little and say, you totally screwed that up. You totally got that backwards.
Right.
But it's what am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and get mad at God or get mad at Tina for not going to the doctor and having it checked and just, I can't get mad. Everything she did was for us. Yeah. And for me, we were perfect partners for each other. We knew each other's love language and we spoke it fluently every single day. We were the 1 in a million, literally, relationship.
If anything else, and it's very clear that now that is your why. I mean, it's dialed in. And so there's not a single person that's successful or achieves what you are achieving that doesn't understand that without that why, you don't get off of the ground, man. And so sometimes it takes a sacrifice like that. I believe it takes a sacrifice of something that you cherish the most to actually have that why really dialed in. And so you're doing exactly the very best thing that anybody could ever hope to do when they lose somebody that they care about that much. And that's to honor them, and not just honor them like thinking about them all the time. That's great. But like, you're putting boots to ground and actually fulfilling a promise you made to her. I can't imagine a better outcome. Right. And so, now that being said, though, man, so you've got all this stuff in the work. You're talking about the website. I guess, where can we see this, or what? I mean, do you got a website yet? And you said you're working on it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I've still got. I mean, I'm on social media all the time. Facebook and LinkedIn. People can find me at my name, Steve Gamlin, Gamlin. My current website is stevegamlinspeaker.com, and that's going to be replaced soon. We're just getting the final edits to the new web designers. But, in case anybody thinks that this is Steve rising, the Phoenix rising from the ashes. As a reminder, one of my keynote stage stories is called Some Days Your Phoenix Rides a Pogo Stick. Are there days I still feel like having a drink? Yeah, not out of depression or anything, but just, dang, a nice tall rum and Coke would taste so good right now. And then I think about it for a second. I go, it would taste great and I would feel amazing, but I would want another one tomorrow night. And then at the end of the week, I'd say, well, I'll just go get one more bottle. And that nasty habit would come right back. And I know it would, because I have a very addictive personality, which is why I just tend to do things that it's okay to get addicted to, like writing in a gratitude journal every day for the last 14 and a half years.
Getting addicted to useful stuff, man.
I'm addicted to cheering people on. I'm addicted to committing acts of kindness. And my family and I we started a nonprofit.
Okay.
It started off as 12 years ago as this little hippie giving mission that I dubbed Beach Bum Philanthropy, because somebody said, Steve, what's your goal in life? I'm like, dude, beach bum. I just learned how to surf at the time. Not very well, but I thought I just want to be a beach bum. I want to be so laid back. And that's how we are with giving. And that's how I am with speaking. And that's how I am with coaching. And that's how I am in life. Is I'm just this laid back, regular guy who has survived everything he's done so far. And he took a hell of a lot of notes. And that's what qualifies me to do what I do. So we've taken that approach into acts of kindness. And then somebody said, Steve, we want to give you money, but you're not a nonprofit. We can't deduct it off our taxes. So my sister did the paperwork. And almost 5 years ago, we became a nonprofit. And when Tina passed, in her obituary, I wrote, flowers are optional. We would love it if you'd commit an act of kindness in Tina's memory. Yeah. And if you so desire, we have a nonprofit, which Tina was a co-founder of, founding member, if you would like to make a donation. And we've got, in just a matter of a couple of weeks, close to $5,000 in donations.
Yeah.
Money we'd never even imagined we'd ever see.
Right.
And we've instituted some things and programs in her memory. That's all part of, now there's so many more people following and being inspired by her. And somewhere there's a beautiful blonde, blue-eyed angel wearing fabulous shoes who is rolling her eyes across heaven. And Tina was a gold medal eye roller. And if she was upstairs right now and I went up after this show, and she'd say, well, how was the podcast? I said, oh, babe, it was awesome. It kicked ass. And she would go, did you tell our story? Yeah, I roll.
Well, brother, I love your story. I think that is one for the ages. I think that what you're doing is courageous, it's noble, and it's clearly your calling. And so for that, I thank you on behalf of everybody. And so I'm going to have links for everybody to come check you out. And we're going to line that all up for everybody's eyeballs. But I want to say thank you, Steve. I want to say thank you for making that decision every day not to get that rum and Coke. And, fighting the good fight, man, in Tina's honor. And so thank you very much. It's been another episode of The Next Fix.